Well, hello. It's good to be here, and it's good to be back. I can't think of anything I have missed more than just the chance to be back at the university and talking with a live audience with, in this case, one of my heroes. So thank you, and thank you for your contributions tonight to the Kent Opportunity Fund. Let's get on with the show. And as I say, this is an opportunity to meet someone whose career I have followed from a distance, sometimes a great distance, since you were on the other side of the world, for many years. So Robin Knox-Johnston is just one of those extraordinary British adventurers whose life story has been an inspiration to me and so many others. In 1969, he became the first person to sail non-stop, single-handedly around the world. By 1994, with Sir Peter Blake, he won the Jules Verne Trophy for the fastest round-the-world navigation in 74 days, 22 hours, 18 minutes and 22 seconds. In 2008, Sir Robin joined Sir Ranulph Fiennes and the BBC's John Simpson for 3 Dogs, Adventures in War, Sea and Ice. And that meant going on a news-gathering trip to Afghanistan, sailing round Cape Horn and hauling sledges across Frobisher Bay in the Canadian Arctic, which doesn't sound very attractive to me, that bit. Please will you give a warm Canterbury welcome to Sir Robin. Maybe we could just start with you and your family. I mean, what kind of background did you have that perhaps projected you to these adventures? What kind of childhood?
Well, I was born just before the war, so my earliest memories of the war and a father who occasionally appeared. I didn't really know him till he was demobbed, and I was 8 by then, and this figure came home at last, which was rather nice. By that time I got 3 younger brothers, and just got on with school really. But by the age of 8 I'd more or less decided I wanted to go to sea. And that you then get programmed because everyone gives you books about the sea or things about the sea, and suddenly they're programming you into this thing. You may have expressed a slight interest, but suddenly it becomes, oh, he wants to do that. And you believe them because you're 8 years old.
But was it a maritime family? I mean, or because you grew up in Putney, didn't you? Which is not on the sea.
Born in Putney.
Born in Putney.
Spent the war on the Wirral,
okay.
Dad away, and then we moved down to Beckenham, and then out to Down. And I went to sea from Beckenham, really. But my mother's side, yes, she'd got relatives who were in the Navy. And my father did work for a shipping company, but not at sea. So there was some slight influence, but not really. I mean, on my father's side, they're all farmers in Northern Ireland, so mother's side was slightly different, lawyers and Navy, I think.
What was it about the sea then? I mean, presumably, you mentioned the books, but that was something which was given to you because the boy's interested in it, presumably. Yeah. So what was it even then that made you, was it the sense of adventure? I
think it probably was, really. Dare I say it, we were much more patriotic. After all, we just had a war. We'd come out of it on top, but pretty bankrupt. But everyone had been bound together by this. And so we were very conscious of our history and our past. And, at my prep school, I mean, what were the houses called? Drake, Raleigh, Wolfe, and something else.
That's a clue, isn't it?
I mean, it's all there, isn't it? All these great British heroes.
But I love the fact that you use the word patriotic, because patriotism has always seemed to me to be about us, whoever we define ourselves as, and the good things about us. Whereas sometimes when people use the word nationalism, they sometimes mean it's about the other people that we don't like so much. It's quite an interesting distinction that you would immediately use that word.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that too, because it does it does get twisted into being very nationalistic, which doesn't really get us anywhere at the end of the day. But I think there's nothing wrong in being proud of your country and being proud of your people who've been brought up in your country and gone out and done something special. But it doesn't always have to be the expense of someone else. And I think that's the difference between my definition of patriotism and nationalism.
Yeah, that's absolutely mine too. Now, I think the first big adventure that I could see in the sea from you was 1965. You decided to sail a small ketch from India back to England. Why? Why?
Well, I was in the Merchant Navy, and I'd been based out there in Bombay for 3.5 years, and I decided it'd be more fun to sail a boat home than come back by P&O or an airliner. So I got hold with 2 others. We started building a boat, which we eventually got completed there. Now, having built it, the other 2 then pulled out. One went to Australia, the other New Zealand. I bought them out with a loan. And now I've got my sole asset sitting in Bombay, and I better do something with it. So I told one of my brothers, "You're coming with me," and a friend. And we set off from Bombay. We went to Muscat, East Africa, South Africa. Ran out of money in South Africa, had to get jobs. I got a job as captain of a ship out. By that time I got a master's ticket and earned enough money to buy food to get us home. And while I was doing that, it's when I heard about Chichester.
So Francis Chichester.
Yeah, Francis Chichester, of course, who got a lot of attention by sailing around the world with one stop in Australia. And this is where the patriotism, not nationalism, comes in. And I thought, if the French hear about that, they'll go and do it. And if they do it first, we'll never hear the last of it.
Exactly, yeah.
So I wrote to 52 companies and said, "Would you back me?" And of course they all said no. And I was back at sea. I was first officer on a passenger liner, the Kenya. And it's very hard to follow up sponsorship from a ship in Mombasa. So that didn't get me very far. I did get some sponsorship. I got a £5 voucher out of Cadbury's. We expressed surprise at how much chocolate I wanted, and much more usefully, 120 cans of beer out of tenants. But that was it.
I can see the point of that one.
Yes, but that was it. But it all sort of tied up with that. I got the boat out there. I brought her home. I couldn't find a sponsor, but I decided I'm going to go. Now, I haven't got a very big boat. On the other hand, I knew that boat. I'd helped build her. I knew her inside out. So in many ways, I was probably, apart from the Frenchman, by far the most experienced. And bear in mind, navigation for me is like having scrambled eggs for breakfast. It's what I do for a living. So apart from Matessier, the Frenchman, really I was streets ahead of any of the others in pure experience terms. But I had to beat the Frenchman, and he had a bigger boat, so he goes faster. So it was always going to be, the sooner I sailed, the better, to get a bit of a start on him, in case he catches it. The French to this day still say, "But of course he was winning when he pulled out." I said, "Only if February comes before January." He was 3 weeks behind me at Cape Horn. He was never going to catch me.
But obviously there's a great difference between being in the Merchant Navy and being a first officer on a ship and learning to sail elsewhere. So where did that start, and how did that start? Was that in your childhood as well?
Yes, I never really sailed as a child because we couldn't afford a boat. But when I joined the Merchant Navy, we had to learn to sail. Because in the event of the ship sinking, you put mast up on a lifeboat and you sailed it. So part of our training as cadets was to learn to sail. Now my company took 2 ships and took all the crew off and just manned it with us cadets. And they gave us a whaler and 2 dinghies. And one of those dinghies was my property. Anyone else took it out, it was all hell to pay. And I was an aggressive little bastard. So that was my dinghy. In fact, my crew once was asked about it, and he said, "What was it like sailing with Robin?" He said, "I think he capsized me in every port east of Suez." And someone said, "What's your answer to that, Robin?" I said, "I reckon I'd be guilty of perjury if I denied it."
Was that a steep learning curve, or was that just because you didn't like him?
No, I did like him a lot. Great fun. We every opportunity we got, we take the dinghy out, we go sailing. And
in terms of the challenges of sailing single-handed round the world, I mean, what were the things that, as you thought about it, the navigation was what you do, that was the day job, so presumably that wasn't the biggest worry. The weather, I mean, or being tired, or getting sick, or what was going through your mind as the things that you had to, the boxes that you had to tick in order to do this?
The most important thing before I sailed was making sure I'd thought of everything. What have I got on board so I can fix things, because they will break. Therefore, I need to have this on board, this on board, this on board to fix it. And really, I only forgot 2 things. And one was solder, and the other was razor blades. and that was a friend's fault anyway. He didn't put them on board. But I was melting down the bottom of light bulbs to get soldered to try and fix the radio, which packed up after 2.5 months. I almost got it working again. The trouble was, every time I tried to transmit, it would blow, but which was a bit frustrating. But really, have I got enough food? How long is this going to take me? 300 days? Take 10%, 330.
Right. And it ended up as what, 312?
312, yeah. My self-steering, what spares have I got for that? I mean, I designed it myself with a friend, and it failed finally off Australia. But what spares do I need to keep this going if I possibly can? What do I do if it doesn't work? Well, I had to find out when the time came. All the other things, you know, have I got enough kerosene for the cooker? Have I got enough petrol for the charger for the batteries? And food, have I got a reasonably balanced diet?
Is that a problem? I mean,
well, you need your strength.
Yeah.
You know, you think Nelson's Navy, the sailors were on 5,000 calories a day. And when we went around the world on Esler and bust the record, we were on 5,000. And it was too much. I got back and my cholesterol level was 9.8. And I thought, oh, that sounds good, I said, yes. And they said, we're about to change your blood. I said, what? You're going on a diet now. Oh, all right.
That's a risk I hadn't thought of, that you
can actually
risk of cardiac
yes.
arrest.
Yeah.
But so what do you eat? I mean, what was it?
Tins. There was nothing. There was no
tinned
freeze-dried.
meat and tinned...
Tinned meat, stewed steak, bully beef, beans, peas, anything, you know, just get enough variety so that you don't get the same meal the whole time. Because at one stage I just got fed up with the food. 2 or 3 days I just couldn't eat. I was fed up with it. Then, of course, I was ravenous, so I ate heavily again.
Did you actually cook it? I mean, you said the kerosene and so on, but do you cook it or do you just eat from the tin? Could you? I mean, it's obviously not high cuisine, so was it just a question of, I've got to fuel myself?
I thought it was haute cuisine. my pot mess, people die for it when we go sailing. No, I got a pressure cooker. And the reason for that is, if the boat lurches and it falls off the stove, the lid will stop it going all over the place. It also cooks faster. And so what you do, you see, on a Sunday, you'll put a few tins in and an OXO cube. Got to have an OXO cube. And you cook it. That's Sunday dinner. On Monday, I'll add another tin of something, peas or something else. Right, but that's enough of that. Now we'll put the rice in. So it's risotto on Tuesday. And it's a slightly different risotto on Wednesday. Thursday, you put the curry powder in. And that takes you through to Friday. Saturday, you just finish up, wash up, and you start all over again the next Sunday.
I can see why you thought it was haute cuisine. The radio, which gets us also into contact, because people thought you were gone, didn't they?
Yes, they did, yeah.
And well, with good reason. I mean, did you first of all, did you see many other ships? Did you see anything else apart from, wildlife or whatever?
Only last time I saw people, I had no news after the radio packed up till I turned up off Australia, and that was about 2 months. They said, oh, well, he's got this far. And that was hilarious, because I went up to the Melbourne pilot vessel and said, will you take my mail, please? And he used that sign that Harvey Smith made famous, clear off, excuse me, I'm 147 days out from the UK, will you take my mail? Where are you from? I said, England. Ah, yeah, where are you heading, mate? I said, well, towards New Zealand. What, across the Tasman? Actually, there is no other way of getting to New Zealand.
He wasn't a navigator.
No, he wasn't. And I said, well, yes. He said, Christ, mate, you'd be bloody careful, that's dangerous. He wasn't the least impressed with the fact I'd sailed all the way from England to Australia. No, the dangerous bit was next door. And so anyway, I safely survived the Tasman Sea, ran into a storm at the end of it, admittedly, met some people, and frankly, at that point, that's the last anyone heard of me for 4.5 months. And I just potted across the Pacific, round Cape Horn to my great relief, and then up the Atlantic.
As you do.
As you do. I saw one ship, 2 ships in that time, one at a great distance, another one at night came very close, and I had pains in my stomach at the time, and I thought, I may have got appendicitis here, this isn't nice. And I called him up with the oldest lamp, didn't answer. I lit a flare, no answer. I put a distress rocket up, went straight past. And I thought, that might be the last humans I'll see. You know, if this is appendicitis, I could be dead shortly. So it wasn't until I got off the Azores on Easter Saturday, 5th of April, 69, I ran into a whole lot of ships. It was one of the main channels. And I called up 18 ships that day with the oldest lamp. And I'm quite good at that. I mean, and it wasn't till 7 in the evening I got my first British ship. And he acknowledged. And I sent him MIK, which is the code for please report me to Lloyd's. And he sent R and then ETA. I thought, he is reading me. Christ, fantastic. So I said 2 weeks. Next morning my receiver worked. So I listened into the BBC, nothing in the news. So I thought, well, he hasn't reported me. Or someone else has finished and it's not news. Well, in fact, he had, because an hour and a half after I finished calling and talking to him with the lamp, my brother answered the phone to be told I'd been sighted. The Sunday Mirror actually stopped the presses, changed the front page.
Did they?
God knows what that cost.
They don't do that accidentally. That's a big decision.
It is a big decision, isn't it? Anyway, so Easter Sunday, it's suddenly I've appeared from nowhere. Now, the funniest story was the mission seaman Padre in Falmouth, a lovely Welshman called David Roberts, and he's giving a sermon that day. And he gets into the pulpit and he says, "Have you heard the news? Robin's been sighted. Most appropriate on the day of the resurrection." You can't invent these stories.
Well, I'm glad it wasn't appendicitis. I'm glad it was just your own cooking. That
Was appendicitis.
Was it?
Yeah. 18 months after I got home, I was feeling awful, and I went to a police station somewhere on the road. I was going down to Exeter, and said it was the doctor. And the doctor poked around. He said, "You better head back. I'll phone the hospital." And it took my appendix out that night. And the surgeon came in the next day and he said, "You had pains before?" And I said, No, I've never had pains. He said, "You sure?" I said, "Well, I did, yes." He said, "Your appendix had burst and patched itself up."
It had burst?
It had burst.
Wow.
And that's why I felt so awful. And I saw him again about 10 years ago. I was giving a talk somewhere and he was there, he'd retired. I said, "Can you confirm that?" He said, "Oh yeah, absolutely. No question, your appendix had burst."
You were very lucky then.
Well, every day's a bonus, isn't it?
Yeah, that's that. How did you cope mentally with being alone, not knowing what was going on in the world, not knowing if you were going to get there, and that actually also being sick? I mean, how did you cope with all that?
To a certain extent, I knew what was going on in the world because the receiver worked.
Ah, yes, of course.
And you hear silly stories about the Vietnam War. Negotiations stopped because they can't agree on the table. They're going to sit round. He said, "The young people have been killed here, guys. You know, come on, this is silly. Just get down to it and sort it out." And I heard about the Americans going around the moon.
Did you?
I've got that from the
August
Caribbean station. Well, I needed to tune in. You see, the one thing you need in navigation is accurate time. So I needed time signals to make sure my chronometers, which is just a fancy name for a very accurate clock, so I need to know its error so I could apply it. Because a second can be a mile when you're navigating, so I need accurate time. So I'd always be listening in, and sometimes you pick up a news station, quite often there'll be pips. Bang, I can get the exact time, which is what I want. So I picked up the Americans going around the moon, coming towards Cape Horn, I think at the time. They landed on the moon 3 months after I got back. And you pick up odd snippets here and there.
But did you ever feel the need to talk to someone? Not that it was possible, or do you just get on with it? Can you be that focused and say, "I can't speak out, I can receive, I've just got to keep going"? I mean, is that how you dealt with it?
Basically, you just got to keep going. I mean, I knew I had a frequency on the transmitter that I tried to use, and I tuned in the receiver to the British Antarctic Survey. And by doing that, I worked out the frequency they were using. And I tried to get the transmitter to work, but of course every time I tried to transmit, it just blew a fuse. I ended up with a nail in the fuse box, but it didn't like that. It got very grumpy after that. But now I spent a lot of time trying to sort that out. I had some idea of what was going on in the world, but there was never any news of me, and I thought, well, I'm just going to press on until I can find someone I can call up and get reported, or I'll just turn up in Falmouth at the end, and they'll say, hello, you've turned up.
And people were glad to see you, weren't they? I mean, what was it like having spent 312 days and several hours alone at sea, and suddenly you get back? First of all, could you walk? I mean, was it a bit wobbly?
It was. I could walk about 200 yards, but my ankles wouldn't take it.
Really?
Well, you see, you're using your upper body, you're not using your legs. I had to take up running again to build up my leg strength. I mean, it's very funny. I could have finished at 9 o'clock the morning I got back in. They told me, they said, would you mind slowing up? I said, oh, come on. 312 days at sea. I want a pint, a steak and a bath in that order. And they said, no, Robin, please slow up. I said, well, why? And they said, well, the mayor and mayoress are going to meet you. The mayoress has got a hair appointment at 9 o'clock. So would you mind slowing up? And the trouble is, after all that time on my own, I felt very friendly towards everyone, so I slowed up. The wind changed, and it wasn't until 3:20 in the afternoon that I crossed the finish line. Now, there were two things about that. One, of course, the poor dear's hairstyle was blown out of the way. But I got constant coverage for 6 hours, 20 minutes on television. They even had to cancel Bewitched that day to cover me coming in. Yes.
And then you get on land, you're feeling a bit wobbly on the ankles, but the reception, I mean, suddenly extraordinary fame. I mean,
apart from the BBC boat ramming me, accidentally.
That's a tradition.
Fortunately, they have bleepers. You know, they can bleep out what you're saying. And I think someone was being very bright in the studio and said, I know what he's going to say, bleep. Poor Francis Chichester was on board. I mean, that's the first time we'd ever met. We hit it off, I'm very pleased to say. But there were quite a lot of boats out there sort of getting in the way and then not in the way. There were a lot of people around, and you know, you land, and first thing was the Sunday Times had organised this race, had got all these security people. And there's my father, who'd always backed me, in his old World War II duffel coat. And I just want to go and give him a hug. You know, it's great to see you, Dad and Mum. And these security people won't let him in. I said, excuse me, and I did that. Yeah, well, I was incredibly strong. They both fell over. And I thought, yes, no, that wasn't awfully clever. They'd not do that again, but at least I got to see Dad. But it was quite emotional arriving back.
And constantly telling your story, as you're doing now, but being asked to tell the story. Were there any, just on that voyage, were there moments where you were very frightened at all, bored? I mean, is that something that happened, or were you just too busy to countenance any of that?
You know, frightened. Yes. Of course you're frightened. I mean, if you do something like that, the person who says they're not frightened is a liar or inhuman. But actually, you don't have much time to be frightened. You've got to deal with it. When you see a 90-foot wave coming towards you and it's breaking, and your boat's 30 feet long, and you know you're going to ride up on the front of this wave, and if you lose steerage, you'll swing round in front of it and get rolled. You lose the mast. You've got to think of an answer to that, and you've got to do it fast, or the boat's going to get smashed. And so you're desperately thinking, how on earth can I do to stop this? How can I make this boat comfortable? And eventually I tried out an idea and it worked. Put a huge warp out the stern. And that just dragged her stern round straight into the waves, and she was beautifully comfortable after that. And thereafter, when I got really bad weather, I went to bed. Nothing I can do on deck. But when you see a really big one coming, it's breaking at the top, that's dangerous. And I saw one once, halfway towards Cape Horn from New Zealand. And I realised it was going to sweep over the boat, and I'm on deck. We are not going to stand up against that. Daniel Craig couldn't. And you know, I just went straight up the rigging to get out of the way, because there was no time for me to get down below into the boat where I'd be safe. So I went up the rigging, and the whole boat disappears under this wave, and it's just you and two masts.
And you're looking down at
the water, and then the boat bobs up.
You hope.
Well, no, I expected it to. Fortunately, I was right.
You were right. Yeah, that is quite extraordinary. Actually, just thinking about that.
At the time, you know, you're just thinking. My main fear is, can I hold on? If the boat swings hard, am I strong enough to hold on to this wire?
The thing that when I read about what you did and talking to you now, the thing that I can't quite understand is how could you sleep? I mean, I know you can't not sleep for 312 days, but the idea of going to sleep and not being able to do anything, just happening. You could have gone to sleep, and one of those things could have happened that you've just discussed, and you wouldn't be here.
Gavin, when a big wave hits the boat and you're asleep, you're down below, the wave will go over the boat. So you're actually hardly aware of it. I mean, you'll hear it rushing over, but you just say, is the boat right? And you can feel that. So the boat's fine. I might pop my head up and just check, but she's all right, I'm going back to bed. You've got to get your rest. And, you know, things that, if you're in the trade winds, for instance, it's quite easy to balance the boat. She's sailing on 5 knots. It's nice and warm by day, the water's warm, little fluffy clouds, the wind's steady, and you can sleep, except when you get close to shipping lanes.
Then, yes.
Which is, then I used to sleep in the cockpit.
Right, because you never know what's...
Exactly. And, you know, I couldn't sleep comfortably in the cockpit, so I didn't sleep for long. So I'd wait till I was clear of the shipping lane and say, okay, should be all right. I mean, I saw 2 ships before I got to that line of ships at the Azores, but I mean, I don't know if there were any others I didn't see.
Yes.
You just will never know.
What animals did you see throughout your journey? I'm quite interested in that journey in 1969 and subsequently sailing, whether you feel that there's a difference in the oceans or a difference in the wildlife or not.
That's a good question, actually. I saw a blue whale after passing New Zealand. I was down below fiddling with the batteries, actually, and I suddenly heard this noise like a steam engine, and the hair went back on the back of my neck. There's no steam engines out here. And I shot up on deck, and I saw this huge whale blowing. Mm-hmm. Now, Sir Haley weighs 10 tons, he weighs 100. I tiptoed past him. I hoped he didn't get amorous with my little boat. You see dolphins, obviously. I mean, I was swimming, doing some work on the boat at one stage because she was leaking, and I needed to get into the water to fix it. And I always remember this huge thing of teeth coming towards me. I thought, my God, it's prehistoric. Actually, I'd never seen a dolphin from in front before.
Right.
It was a dolphin.
It was a dolphin.
And perfectly safe.
Yeah.
Obviously, you saw sharks. I shot a couple of them because one was getting in my way, and so was the other one. I caught a Dorado dolphin and ate that, but I speared that. But bird life, masses of it, and it's very indicative, actually, if you're getting close to land. I mean, certain birds, they're oceanic birds like albatross, and Mother Carey's chickens, stormy petrels. But some birds, if you watch them, they're land birds, watch the direction they go in at night. That's where land is. Mm-hmm. You can almost navigate by it.
Ah, that's very, yes.
It's quite interesting, yeah.
So you're doing something that the Romans did before you and the Chinese sailors 3,000 years
certainly
ago.
Certainly the people who lived in the Pacific. That's certainly how they navigated. But so did Columbus, same thing.
Yeah. Just on that point about repairing the boat. So how do you do that then when you were swimming? So you tied on. How does it work?
No. The line would have got in my way. I took the sails off. It was in the doldrums. And so there wasn't much wind. Right. The sails down anyway. And I cut a strip of copper, about that, which I had left over from the earthing plate from the radio. And I knocked holes every inch. I had some tacks. I went down with a bit of line on it so I wouldn't lose it, with one tack in the end and the hammer on a line. It's about 5 feet underwater. Took a deep breath, down I go, get it lined up, bang, I've got one tack in. Now I slowly worked my way all the way down this, which took me the best part of a day. In the middle of it, the shark comes along. Well, sorry, you're not very welcome, because you're going to distract me. And this shark, and I used to hunt them with a spear gun in the Persian Gulf, and you can tell when they're getting a bit awkward, they get slightly more jerky. Got a wonderful sinuous motion all. It was beautiful to watch. but when they start getting jerky, oopsie, time to get out. But he didn't go away. Now I've got this job half done. I don't want this copper, I don't want to lose this copper because I've only got enough to do the job. So I threw some lavatory paper in the water. This is before the days when shops had running out of lavatory paper.
Did you panic buy it?
Panic buy. And of course the scavengers, so when his head came up to get it, I shot him with a rifle and waited half an hour to check. But I must have had a clean shot into his brain because no more sharks appeared. So I was able to carry on overside, but looking over my shoulder a bit more often.
Right, I think on that note, can we raise the lights a little bit and maybe get some questions from the audience?
Now as sailors we have so many different benefits and aids. Is there one thing that you would say has really, really revolutionised or changed the sailing world since your trip?
I'd have to say it's the electronics. I mean, that covers a lot. I mean, the instruments we can get now, for instance, are amazing. But I think probably the biggest, from my perspective, as someone who likes crossing oceans, GPS, global positioning system, no question. And that has made it possible for untrained people, not like me who are trained navigators, untrained people to actually take on voyages which were just unthinkable 50 years ago. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things that happened. But you look at other things we've done since self-steering gears come in, single-handers introduced that. Furling forestays, single-handers brought that in. Most of these developments, these labour-saving developments, came from the single-handed brigade when we were looking for ways of making ourselves more effective when we were racing.
What was Bernard Metissier like?
We used to swap letters. Bernard Metissier was the Frenchman I spoke about, who I thought was my biggest competition. We used to swap letters about every year until he died. What doesn't come out, though, is off Hobart in Tasmania. He met up with an Australian fishing boat and asked where I was. And they said I'd left New Zealand 3 weeks before. 3.5 weeks before, and he said, "It is finished." And that never came out, but the fisherman came out with it later. So I think he decided there wasn't much point in coming back, to be honest. He was 19 days behind me at Cape Horn, which was really too big a gap for him to close. But neither of us knew that at the time. We only found that out later. But I liked him. We used to swap, quite nice letters. I found one of them, and I wish I could find the others.
His boat was quite interesting, wasn't it? It was made of boilerplate, and it was, wasn't it, like telegraph poles or something?
I think he had telegraph poles for his
quite a curious
masts.
build.
Telegraph poles for his masts. It was made of steel, yeah. But he covered quite a few miles in it. I mean, he knew his boat. And he was a good seaman.
There was someone else? Yes, gentleman there, and then we'll come down.
Thanks very much. I was just thinking that the science and technology of yacht racing has changed to almost, to be unrecognisable since your race. I wondered, just interested in your views on yacht racing today, and also I'm also really interested in whether you could make strategic decisions as you did the race, things like weather routing and things like that, or whether you just had to kind of get on with it and just follow a pre-planned route. So just a few thoughts on that would be great.
Well, the first question is, talking about weather, there was no weather forecast. So there was no weather routing. In any case, I could have transmitted, but I could have listened, but there was nothing for me to pick up. So there was no weather routing. There were no satellites. There's no GPS. You navigate with a sextant. My method of working out what the weather's doing, I've got a barometer, I've got the wind direction, and I've got the clouds. And from that, I'll try and work out what the weather's going to do. So I couldn't say, right, the barometer's dropping, I wonder how close I am to the centre. I had no idea how close I was to the centre. Sorry, in these days you'd say, looking 10 days ahead, the weather forecast indicates I'm going to get rather close to the centre, so I'll alter course now to keep myself in more favourable conditions. Couldn't do that in those days. So there was no real choice about it. We didn't have that option. There's so much change. I mean, carbon fibre was in its infancy. Fiberglass was there, but hadn't been used very long. Sails were Dacron, and all this modern stuff. Rigging, I had plough, and that wasn't uncommon. So it's, you know, electronic navigation, electronic pilots to steer the boat for you, they hadn't been invented. So it was a different world, really, to today. And this is one of the reasons why they can get round faster. They can predict their weather and plot tactically where they want to put their boat. I mean, when I went around the world in 06, 07 in my Open 60 racing, I was able to go so much faster because I could work out tactically where I wanted to be. Makes a big difference.
I was interested to hear your thoughts about a brassy Aussie organising a retro race, trying to copy what you did with the Golden Globe.
Yeah, it took place. This is a race they did 3 years ago now, to replicate what I did, and boats about the same size. And I forget how many set off, but not many of them finished. And it was very interesting because 5 of them got rolled. The thing I told you about going down the front of the wave. I told all of them what to do, and not one of them did it. I said, well, guys, you know, I can tell you, but if you won't do it, what do you expect? And one was a replica of Suhaili. And I told the guy, I said, you know, get her in those conditions, put the warp out the back. And his last message before he got badly injured was, I can't control her, she's lying beam on. I said, yeah, of course you bloody is. You haven't put the warp out, you clot. Anyway, he lost his boat in the end, which was a great shame. But it was quite I'd actually studied all of them and wrote a small report about it, because it was quite clear that it was the failure to be able to control the boat when it starts to surge down a wave and the wave overtakes it. That's where the danger was. You need something to check you.
On that same topic, so your solo trips, how easy was it to adjust to doing the trips with the other guys? Because obviously you were in control the whole time with the solo trips, and then later on, was that more awkward?
The awkward thing about having crew is you're responsible for them. You know, if I'm on my own, it's down to me. If I muck up, it's entirely my own fault. There's no one else to blame. But you've got crew. You know, not so long back, I came up on deck and found the chap I left on watch fast asleep. He's never sailed with me since. He won't. I won't have him on board, because I think that's one of the biggest crimes you can commit. And we're crossing Lyme Bay, for goodness sake. It's full of fishing boats. Just bloody dangerous and irresponsible. But on the whole, when you get good crew, and I have got some who I'd sail with anywhere, frankly, it's great. It's very relaxing and it's good fun. And I feel very comfortable with them. So I've got my sort of small cadre of people whose skills I know, whose weaknesses I know, and they know mine. And we go sailing quite a lot, actually. But I'm very relaxed with them. They're good company. And we've got an easy, because we've done it quite a lot together, very easy relationships, which I think makes it fun for us all.
Suhaili, is she still sailable? And do you think you'd go sailing with her again, but not such a long journey? But do you still sail with her?
Suhaili was my boat that I took around the world, the one I built in India. I was sailing her 3 weeks ago. So she's down in Gosport. I keep her in commission and I use her because if you want to keep a boat properly, use it. You get all those little jobs done. Things catch your eye and everything gets work, you know, the engine gets run. I mean, the only instrument I've got on her is an echo sounder. I still use bits of wool. Oh, and I've got a little flechette up at the masthead. But I mean, that's it. Of course, I got VHF, but that's it. That's enough, thank you. I don't need any more.
There's a couple I've got here that I thought you'd be intrigued with. Do you have a favourite knot, and do you have a favourite ocean?
That's a good one. My favourite knot is the Carrick Bend, the Diamond Carrick Bend. I don't know who asked that, but how many of you know what it is? Hold your hands up. And we got one, good. Excellent. 2,
too?
It's a fabulous knot because it's very easy to tie, and if you need to put an extra bit of warp out on your anchor or a tow line, put a carrick bend in it, because it will not give. Once you pull it tight, it will not give. But it's like a bowline, you can break it open afterwards. So that's my favourite knot. I mean, how many knots do we use? You know, I've got the Ashley book at knots at home, and it's got, what, 10,000 knots in it, of which I probably use 50, I should think. So what was the...
Favourite ocean?
Favourite ocean? Oh, without doubt, the Indian Ocean. It's lovely and warm, totally predictable, monsoonal. No, it's lovely. And actually, I enjoy the land on either side of it.
Have you had difficulty settling on land, considering you've been out at sea for so long?
No, no, I don't. No, it's I can settle down at home quite comfortably. It's but now my wife's dead now, so I get a bit lonely. So I thought, oh, I'll go back to sea. I feel comfortable there. So I probably spend as much time at sea as I can even today, and I enjoy getting out to sea. When she was alive, she used to sail with me. She crossed the Atlantic with me twice, despite the fact she was seasick for the first 2 days. But towards the end, I mean, she said, look, I'm not going to cross any more oceans with you. I said, oh, all right then. All right, well, I'll sail to the Caribbean and you fly out and join me. Yes, all right then. So we've got a deal on this. So I'd take off on my own, because I like to be on my own occasionally. About once every 6 to 10 years, I say, I'm off. I've got to be on my own. I'm going to go across the Atlantic. It had nothing to do with our relationship at all. I just needed to go to sea on my own.
Do you notice big differences when you sail now in terms of what the oceans look like, what the wildlife looks like? I mean, we're all very, very concerned about what's happening to our world. So is it obvious that it's not the same sea that you were sailing in 1969 or not?
Yeah, there's more plastic around, but that comes from the land. I mean, we were discussing this earlier. That's got to be dealt with. We can't go on poisoning the oceans. It's largely stopped from merchant ships and warships because we've got the Marpole treaties, and you could be reported by one of your crew if you threw stuff in the sea. You're not allowed to do it. And that's been around for over 40 years, and I think most people stick to it. Get close to land is when you see the rubbish. It gets blown off. You know, what am I looking at Kentucky Fried Chicken containers for 5 miles off the coast of America? That should have been put in a bin. Here's a container for washing up liquid. Why hasn't that gone in a bin? Why is that out here at sea? And recently, as we're discussing, we now discover there's tiny little bits of plastic inside face powder, for instance. Well, it's got to stop, but it's getting into the food chain. And the real danger is people will put clear, what's that stuff? Clear plastic you put on food in your fridge.
Cling film, yeah.
Cling film, that's right. Because it looks like jellyfish, doesn't it? Turtles eat jellyfish. So they'll eat plastic like cling film and it clogs up their inside and they die. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't like jellyfish. Some of them can sting rather painfully. So come on the turtles. So let's not kill them. You know, it's crazy. Especially when quite a lot of their species are under threat.
What about fish and other wildlife as well? I mean, there are those who think we're seriously overfishing the oceans. We waste a lot of the fish that we could eat and do other things with. I mean, is that obvious too?
I think we do waste a lot. I mean, I remember coming into Troon in Scotland one day. I was out with a lifeboat actually, and for about 3 miles, all these undersized fish, fishermen had just dumped.
Thrown away. Mm.
Now, why did they catch them? Were the nets the right size? But those fish are never going to grow to full size. Why are you doing that? This is crazy. You know, we do need to think about how we preserve the fish stocks. And we've got other threats to it now with the seawater temperatures changing.
Mm.
You know?
And is that of? I mean, I've talked to a number of people about talking about that and about where fish spawn and it's different, and therefore the cormorants go out to different places,
Yep.
so that we're all familiar with how things are interlinked. But is that obvious to someone sailing on the sea?
Not sailing, but when you talk, say, to the Inuit in Greenland, they were told the fish are moving further north. It's getting warmer, and I love going to Greenland because it's pretty bare, and you've got the fun of getting through the ice, which is, that makes that, boy, that's living. But you know, you meet the Inuit who are very, very well educated. You get chatting to them about things. I mean, there's less ice now, noticeably less ice. 30 years ago, I went up there with Chris Bonington to go climbing, and we had a job getting through the ice. Now it isn't there, and it isn't there much further north. 3 years ago, I got into Scoresby Sound, much further north. A few icebergs in, otherwise I went right up, 80 miles up the field. No trouble at all. That would not have been possible 30 years ago. So it is happening. And people who deny global warming, sorry, you know, you're mad. You might as well believe in a flat Earth. It is up there and it's happening. The average thickness of the Arctic ice has halved from 8 to 4 feet. Well, what's causing that?
We are.
We are. Well, okay, maybe it is a cycle. That's the counter-argument. Yeah, but supposing it isn't a cycle, don't you think we ought to do something just in case?
I wanted to ask you before, we've got about 10 minutes left, but I just wanted to ask you a little bit about the 3 dogs. I'm just trying to imagine. So there's you,
Yeah,
Sir Ranulph Fiennes,
yeah,
and John Simpson,
yeah,
and you decide to go to Afghanistan,
yes,
sleds across the Arctic,
yeah.
and what was the other one?
Round Cape Horn.
Round Cape Horn. How did that go? Because I know John very well. You're clearly a very strong character. I don't know Sir Ranulph Fiennes, but I assume he is too. What was it like?
Ran is an utter gentleman. He's one of the nicest people, the considerate people I know, and he's great fun with it. John, you know John as well as I do, he's not physically strong or pushy like Ran and I, but he's tough. I mean, in Afghanistan, when they were praying, and you could see they were upset, I think John was trying to get top of the news. He wanted to be attacked. He wanted to be, you're shocked, yes, like hell you are. But he wanted to be top of the news. So we spent 5 days in Kabul watching John reporting on what was going on. This is 2009, so it's some time back. And then we went down to Jalalabad, and we went up to Tora Bora, where Osama bin Laden had been hiding. And it was utterly fascinating. My uncle had been British minister there in the 30s, so I was very keen to see it. And enormous fun, except when Ran and I escaped from the hotel because we got bored. But that was different.
You went on the town in Kabul.
We went on the town, yeah.
Is there anything you can tell us about that?
Well, I was looking for a Martini Henry rifle, but couldn't find a proper one. They were all made in Peshawar, copies. And the BBC security got very upset and bollocked us. And Ran and I didn't really like being bollocked.
Just a Martini Henry rifle. I mean, you could have got an AK-47 quite easily. Why did you want a Martini Henry rifle?
Well, we did get AK-47s.
Yeah, I thought you might.
Because they then decided we were going to Jalalabad, and Ran and I thought, well, we're going to get even. Not going. Got to go. Shan't. Why not? Health and safety. What do you mean health and safety? Well, 2 weeks ago, 11 French soldiers were beheaded down that road. We don't think this is safe. Health and safety. Let's throw it back at him. Because he was telling us health and safety, we got into the souk in Kabul. And as I pointed out, Ran speaks Arabic, I speak Hindi, we both lived out there. We're darn sight safer than this BBC security man is. Anyway, he didn't like that. We refused to go down, and they said, well, how can we persuade you, because it's in the programme? Well, you'll have to arm us. No. BBC can't arm me. Well, we're not going in. Eventually, as we left in a little combi, underneath Ran's seat and mine was a rolled up bit of carpet. Inside it, each was an AK-47 and 5 magazines. At this point, Ran and I were really happy, if you can imagine.
I should point out that the 5 magazines didn't include The Spectator or Punch. We were talking about... Right. I can see that the health and safety person was then blowing a fuse. But anyway, you survived.
We survived, yes, we weren't attacked. It took a bit of time to persuade the colonel of the Afghan border force that probably wasn't a good idea to go back the same route we'd come. Could we take a different route, please? Because Taliban would have minded overnight. So that got changed. But it was utterly fascinating, and the people actually were delightful. And you just think it's such a bloody shit. But you know, you meet a load of headmen, because John was looking for stories everywhere. This was fascinating. And we got these headmen, they're pretty outspoken guys. They said, well, where's the tractor? We see all these foreign aid people coming in their new 4x4s. They're always round here making notes and doing things, but all we want is a tractor. And they hadn't got a tractor. So I thought, yeah, there's something wrong here. This is not the way to win the hearts and minds of these people, which I thought was a shame. Got down to the Khyber Pass, that was quite fun. It was a lovely trip, I did enjoy it. And then Rand took us up to Iqaluit in right up north in Canada in January. Got quite
To
cold.
tow a sledge?
Yes, yes.
By yourself?
The BBC wanted pictures of us towing sledges.
Right. And how was that? I can't imagine that's a lot of fun.
Well, BBC, of course, didn't trust us with the programme. So we arrived there to find they got an expert on Arctic travel who, frankly, Rand could have left standing, which I found vaguely insulting, because they keep saying, you know, Eric, we'll do this, we'll do this, do this. And Eric would say, well, I think we should do this. I'm standing next to one of the great Arctic explorers in Rand. So I got fed up with it. I thought, I'm not going to have my friend insulted. And whenever Eric came up and said, well, I think we should do this, I said, is that right, Rand?
It's probably lucky they didn't try and tell you how to sail around Cape Horn. Or did they?
No, they didn't. But they didn't share the programme with us. They said, oh, that's why we're doing the barbecue. What barbecue? Oh, the barbecue. Oh, you didn't tell us about that. It's, I think, directors and producers don't like sharing stuff with you.
Is there, on any of these things that you've done, did you ever think, I'm going too far, this is a mistake, I shouldn't have got on to this whatever it was, this particular adventure is the one that's going to do me in?
Yeah, Greenland with Chris Bonington. We're up at about 5,000 feet. And we're going up a mirror. I mean, I can't see where you're going to hang on. He knows, obviously. And I'm on a ledge about that wide. And there's a 3,000-foot drop. I say, what on earth was I thinking getting involved in this? It's thoroughly unsafe. And Chris says, climb, ready. And I'm sort of looking. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm looking for a handhold. And he said, you don't need a handhold. I said, you may not, I bloody do. I was flat against his surface, I can tell you. Not a lovely person to go on an expedition with, though.
Yes, well, I guess so. But I mean, that would tend to make me more risk averse in the future, being stuck 3,000 feet up on a ledge that wide with when I'm not a mountaineer.
I am not a mountaineer. I mean, I learned a lot, but I still would not claim to be a mountaineer. And therefore, I was really discovering what it was all about. And I came to the conclusion that it was bloody dangerous.
Not to be recommended.
No. I've done a little bit since, but nothing that extreme.
Well, there's always next year. You know, have you got more expeditions, plans?
Well, you see, you never know, do you? I mean, if I were to say what's going through my mind at the moment, someone else would say, oh, well, I'll go and do that first. Guys, I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do. And it may be nothing, so now you don't know.
On that note, Sir Robin, thank you very much. Thank you.